Welcome to the very first episode of the AiPC Interviews. So this is the very first episode of the AiPC Interviews where I talk to members of the Artful iPhotography community about them. But this time we're starting things a little differently. I am going to be the one interviewed so that the community can get to know me a little better. And who's going to interview me but my good friend known as the iPhone art girl, Meri Walker. Hello, Meri.
Hi, Greg. This is going to be big fun.
It is, and as you could probably tell, I'm a bit of a nervous wreck because this is the very first time I've ever done my own podcast.
And it's really exciting. It's really exciting. And you can be nervous, and your guests will be nervous when they do their part. And this time, since you're the guest and the host, no wonder. But it's okay.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure. So we're going to try to get this done in an hour or under. So I'm going to just ask you some questions and people can listen in and find out more about you. So to start off, people who don't already know you, and I'm not assuming everybody does, you've been the co-host of Tiny Shutter. That's a 7-year podcast. Yes?
8 years. I think it just turned 8 years in January this month.
8-year podcast. Amazing. About iPhone photography.
And I've been on there since October of 2017.
Okay. So you also wrote your own ebook about your passion for iPhone photography. And you've recently taken on hosting the AiPC group. It's a membership group and for the iPhone Artful community. And now you want to start another podcast about iPhone photography. And I bet everybody wants to know, what is it that has you doing all that stuff?
It's a passion for making art and doing photography with your iPhone, because I just fell in love with it, I would say 10 years ago when I got my first iPhone, and I haven't looked back since. So it's really just the love of the medium, the love of the art. And I mean, I used to do traditional photography, but I never got into it nearly as much as I did this type of work. So it's just for the love of it.
Well, and a lot of people, have iPhone photography passion, but they don't get themselves all invested in all of these other ways to communicate about it. So what are your hopes with starting yet another podcast?
Well, as you mentioned that I wrote the book, and the book is basically my story about how I got into, iPhone photography, and it was my transition from, I call it traditional to photography. I had a Canon DSLR, lenses, all kinds of stuff to go with it. And my book is about my story behind the transition from one type of photography into the other, why it happened, how it happened. So that's my story. And I think everybody has a story to tell about their iPhone photography, whether it's a story similar to that, where they went from one kind of photography to another, or just about their their favorite things to shoot, or their style, or whatever. Like, I know so many different iPhone photographers have so many different styles, and I'm sure there's got to be a story behind how they develop that style.
Well, of course there is, and that's kind of an interesting thing for other iPhone photographers to hear sometimes, because we can be isolated in our own little worlds.
Definitely.
And I, for one, am pretty interested in how other people got into this thing and how they practice it. So I think there's a big space for this kind of interview format. And I'm crazy about the fact that you want to start it. So what I do wonder, and I bet other people who have listened to you through Tiny Shutter might be wondering is how do you want this show, this AiPC interviews, how do you want it to be different from Tiny Shutter?
Well, Tiny Shutter is about iPhone photography, I would say in general. We cover news, we cover gear, accessories. We talk about photography in general, like we talk about the ethics. We talk about different apps, basically everything to do with iPhone photography that we could think of. We'll talk about it, but we don't talk about the people behind it. We don't talk about, like I said, people's stories about their work and their styles and things like that. So this is more of a personal kind of program, whereas Tiny Shutter is more of an entertaining, learning type of thing where, like I say, it's more generalized. And it's fun to do. It's a great show. It's been going for 8 years, so I mean, it's got to be, it's got to have some value in it there, obviously, and it's not going away. So, and it's because photography, iPhone photography is always changing.
It sure is.
But for this program, it's all about the people. It's all about, and every artist is different. So that's why I think there's room for a lot of different types of stories to be told.
I think you're right. So how long do you see this podcast running on a, guessing basis?
Well, I haven't quite figured out how often I'll record. I think that's going to depend greatly on people's schedules and whatnot. I would say I could probably do at least 2 a month, like at least go bi-weekly, or it may just be monthly. But, I have probably a dozen to 15 people in the queue wanting to do the show. So I've had pretty good response so far from people when I put it out there that I want to do this podcast. So that's a good thing. But if there's a time that comes that I can't do a member of the Artful iPhotography community, like it's a private community, and we'll get more into that. But I will reach out to notables in the iPhone photography field and see if they want to come on and do a guest appearance.
Okay, so it sounds like you got plenty of content to work with, and maybe you'll do it every 2 weeks, or maybe you'll do it once a month. But just as we're doing this first start, you want to let people know who you are and what you're thinking, and maybe you're going to get some feedback from listeners about what they might like.
Right, because if they've heard me on Tiny Shutter, if they caught my first ever appearance on that show where I was actually just a guest, the guys did interview me, and I probably talked about a lot of things there that I could talk about tonight. But I mean, a lot has happened since then too. So, but yeah, definitely this is to introduce me to everybody, and then it'll kind of set the standard for how the shows will be laid out going forward.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to get right down to it, and I'm going to be acting like you as a host, and you're going to be acting like your future interviewees. You're going to be the interviewee. So let's just get down to it.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. And so I know that one of the things you want people to talk about is how they got into iPhone photography. And so, what's your story behind all that?
Well, I could probably go on for an hour about it, but I'll make it a real brief outline. Like I said before, I had a Canon DSLR. I got into photography at a very young age when I was, preteen even. And I got a little Kodak 110 camera for Christmas one year. And ever since I started snapping pictures with that thing, I thought this is a lot of fun, and I really fell in love with it. So then over the years, a couple of different cameras and whatnot, then I got out of it for quite a while and got back into it again. And But in the last probably 17 years, I've been into it fairly steady and learning so much more about it than I ever did before that. So I'm not I'm not an outdoorsman. I don't go hunting, fishing, all that stuff. This is my thing. Photography and iPhone stuff is my thing. And how I got into the iPhone side of it is when I got my iPhone 4S 10 years ago, I could not believe how good the pictures were out of that phone. I had Blackberries prior to that, and they were okay at best. It was when I saw a friend's photo of a dog, of his daughter's dog, and I can remember this vividly. And I saw the photo, and I think it might have been on Facebook or something. And I asked him, "Oh, which Canon?" Like, 'cause he had a couple of different Canon cameras. "Which camera did you take this picture with?" And he said, "That's with my iPhone." And he had an iPhone 4. So, and this is before my first iPhone, mind you. And I
Mm-hmm.
was blown away at the quality of the image. And I was dead set against getting anything from Apple because I didn't like the way Steve Jobs had everything in a closed environment, locked down. You couldn't use peripherals, other equipment with Apple stuff. Everything it had to be Apple stuff or it didn't work. And I didn't like that at the time. I will say now that I can very much appreciate his vision for why he did that. But so I ended up getting the 4S when it came out, and I just haven't turned back. The apps that were available then, the quality of the images that I could shoot, I was just having so much fun with that thing, and I used it more and more, and my Canon less and less. And then it was about 4 years ago. I'm sitting in my office, I'm looking at my camera bag on the floor, and it looked like it was getting dusty. I wasn't using it as much. I mean, I could go out and take pictures and just pull the camera out of my pocket and snap a picture instead of lugging the big camera bag around in the whole 9 yards. So that's basically how I got into it. And then, of course, with the apps and another big thing is the people that I met through this, whether it was on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But the people that I've met through iPhone photography, it's just been such a wonderful experience. And I mean, they're just great people. We all have a common love for iPhone photography. I mean, there's a lot of people that still shoot traditional stuff too. That's fine. That's great. I do love that kind of photography still, but I just can't get away from the iPhone side of photography. I just love it so much uh, to be able to be out somewhere, take a picture, do a quick edit on it, and then throw it on Instagram if I want. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that, in my opinion. So that's kind of how my transition went from traditional to iPhone photography.
Well, I, many people are going to have a similar kind of story, and yet everybody has their own little way they got into it. I think,
Oh yeah.
I know that it's a great joy for me to have met you through our passion of iPhone photography. And the thing that fascinates me is that we have not yet met in person. We've done a bunch of speaking like this back and forth, but
Hmm.
we've been sharing pictures in the Artful iPhone photography community. And um, I know when I meet you, I'm not going to be surprised when I meet you in person. And so the thing that happens when we're sharing this passion and we have this crazy device that we can use all the time for in different ways, you make these amazing friendships. And that's a big part of it.
Oh, sure it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
So,
it's like anybody that I know really well through this medium, like the tiny shutter guys, people on the Artful Life photography community. Uh, like you said, I'm not going to be surprised when I meet them. I mean, I might think that there might be 6'2" and they turn out to be 5'10", whatever. But I mean,
yeah.
that's But I mean, because people are always bigger than they really are, like when you think of them that way. But I mean, it's just going to be like I've known them for years.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I
like
mean,
when
it makes an amazing human connection possible
it
in a way
does.
that I just, despite all of my experience with all kinds of cameras forever and ever, nothing has been like this iPhone experience.
Yeah.
So what kind of device are you using these days?
Okay, so I have the iPhone XS Max, and I didn't upgrade to the 11 because I was always on the S cycle of upgrades, so 4S, 5S, 6S, and then when it should have been the 7S, it was 8 and 8 Plus, and then the 10. They all come out together, which it kind of threw people for a loop. But whatever Apple's reasoning is, it was the 10th anniversary of the iPhone, so that's why they wanted to get the 10 out when they did. So then last year with the 10s, the 10s was everything that I wanted in the 10. Because when I was gonna, so 2 years or what, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 2 years ago when the 10 and the 8 Plus and the 8 came out, I didn't get the 10. I got the 8 Plus because the 10 I was expecting better out of it, but for the money, the 8 Plus was almost as good as the 10, camera wise. So I elected to save a little bit of money and go with the 8 Plus. And then last year when the 10s Max came out, that was everything that I was looking for, and I upgraded. So that was the first time I upgraded 1 year later. But now
So
I've
that's what you're
decided,
using now. You're using
yeah,
the
the
10x Max.
10s Max. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And just so people know, I still have my 8 Plus myself. And I
Hmm.
didn't jump up to where you jumped up to, but I recently just jumped up to the 11 Pro. But we're doing this interview on my 8 Plus, and it's an awesome phone. That's an
Oh yeah.
awesome device. So, it's an interesting thing, what anybody is using at any given point in time.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
the device is one thing, and then there's, our creative process. And
Hmm.
the creative process sometimes is limited or augmented by the phone itself, because of the processors and the features that continue to improve. But your creative process is sort of often an independent part of that process. So,
Yeah.
how does yours work?
Well, when I was going through my years of iPhone photography, okay, so in 2012, which is when I got my 4S, like I got it in what was it, October of 2012. At that point, there was a lot of filters and stuff like that, different apps that you can do amazing things with. And for 2012, no, I got it in October 2011. So in 2012, it was a leap year, and I did a photo a day for the whole year. And so instead of just posting a photo a day, I took the shot, edited, and posted the photo every day for the year. So it was a little more difficult than what some people want to do. But I look at that now because I've got all 366 photos because it was a leap year made into a poster, and it's hanging on my wall right in front of me. And
Uh-huh.
I look at that and I see so many different editing styles, and there must have been I don't know how many different apps I used that year to do stuff, but I've gotten away from that. Uh, that was that was I guess when I was like a kid in a candy store and I had to try out everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then I got away from that and got into more taking a photographic approach to iPhone photography. I wanted to prove to myself that I can do with this phone what I was doing with my Canon. And, I started to ease back on the apps that I was using and, just try to make my pictures look very, very good without a whole ton of stuff done to them. And so I was doing that for a few years. And then when I got the 8 Plus, things kind of changed for me a little bit because it got so good at rendering an image. Like when I say rendering an image, I mean just shooting JPEG. It got so good at doing that that I did even less editing. And then of
Uh-huh.
course when the 10s Max came out, I mean, wow, I could not believe the dynamic range that this thing has. So my editing probably became even less again. And then so I got to the point where I was just shooting and barely touching the photos.
And
I
so
always,
I have to break in and ask,
yep.
what are you using to make these amazing dynamic range photos? What app are you using? Are you using the native camera or some other camera replacement app? What's your favorite camera?
Well, the native camera does a very good job of it, but my favorite camera app is Halide.
Uh-huh.
The guys behind Halide are so smart and so good at writing their code that they've been able to capture all the abilities of these things and use that technology to produce an app that just does an amazing job. Like the user interface is fantastic. Sebastian DeWitt, he's the guy that designed the user interface and whatnot. He used to work at Apple. He used to work on, if you remember back in the old days of iOS 6 and whatnot, it was like the Find My Friends app had that faux stitching look and all that stuff. He was on the team that put all that together. So he's a very
Uh-huh.
good designer. And Ben Sandovsky was on the Twitter app team. He wrote the code for the Twitter app, or he was one of the writers for the code for Twitter for their mobile app. And I mean, these two guys are just amazing at what they can do and what they can pull out of these phones in their apps. So I use Halide for that. And so most recently though, I've decided I'm going to get back into the more of the photographic approach to my photography by shooting raw. Because when you shoot raw, like so what I do is I shoot raw in JPEG, so that way I can have the best of both worlds. If the JPEG's fine, I can just share it the way it is. But what I can do with the raw and what I've done recently, and you saw one of those pictures that I put out of the frozen landscape on
Yes.
the edge of the bay there. Well,
Incredible
those were
detail.
all, yeah, thanks. Those were all shot in raw, and I use Lumibee to do my processing. Now, there's a bunch of different apps that you can process raw images with, but Lumibee is my favorite. And what I do is I really pay attention to the histogram. So generally, there will be a part of that raw file that's overexposed. So I will slide the exposure slider back until that histogram comes off the edge and there's no clipping on the highlights. And then I'll adjust the contrast. Usually have to take the contrast down a little bit until the the left side of the histogram is closer to the edge, and it gives me the best dynamic range to work with going forward. And then from there, I'll adjust the highlight, shadows, lights and darks and whatnot to give it a little more contrast and a little more pop, if you will. And then work with a little bit with the saturation or vibrance, and then sharpen it. I may add a little bit of vignetting, and then I'm done.
Right.
And
And you're
what I like
doing all
about,
of that mostly with Lumibee. So Lumibee is letting
yes,
you make all those adjustments when you've got a raw file.
yes,
And then does it let you save it out as a high resolution file, or are you mostly
yep.
just doing this and saving to social media with a JPEG?
No, I save everything out. I save it out as a JPEG, but it always goes out in full resolution.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I just update or upload to Instagram or wherever from there. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't resize my images for social. It always does that on you anyway. So,
Yes. Well, okay.
so
So Lumibee is your favorite. Are there any other editors you like, and Halide is your favorite camera? Are
mhm.
there any other cameras or any other editors you use, or is that really like what you're focused on these days?
Well, those are the ones I use the most, but I do have a bunch of other ones. Like I have probably half a dozen camera apps, Camera Plus
Right.
2, Pro Camera, things like that. Um, a lot of times I find I have them for the purposes of tiny shutter, where we talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have them, I can't say much about them. Or if someone needs help with something, if say if Halide can't do a certain thing where Camera Plus 2 can, then I can recommend that.
Hmm.
Things like that. So I have a lot of them for reference, but I have been playing around a little bit with things like Visionist and Oilist, a couple of apps that we talked about on Tiny Shutter last
Hmm.
week.
Hmm.
I really like Oilist. It takes an image and it renders it more like an oil painting, and it slowly changes. It keeps changing and changing and changing, and as it's changing, you can tap there's a button that you can tap to save that out as a separate file, and then as it keeps changing and changing and save it out again. And I'm having a lot of fun with that.
Hmm.
There's been a few people on the AIPC drop them in there and show what they're doing with it. So I got away from that for so many years, but I'm just starting to get back into playing around with that stuff again.
Well, I have this thing that I talk about for me as the iPhone art girl, where on the one hand, I'm a die-hard photographer, and on the
Hmm.
other hand, I'm a die-hard multimedia printmaker. So, we can slide back and forth between the two using these devices. It's astonishing. And, when you get kind of stuck or dry in one aspect, sometimes it's refreshing to jump into the other.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to have some fun with it, that's for sure.
Well, so again, for the sake of time, and because this is the kind of format people are going to be able to expect, there's one more question that you're going to be asking people regularly, and I'm going to ask you right now, so they know what it is for you. But where do you imagine or want your work to take you these days? Your iPhotography work.
Well, I've often thought that if I can get featured on the Shot on iPhone campaign with Apple, then my goal will have been reached.
Uh-huh.
Just hasn't happened yet. I don't know if it
Uh-huh.
ever will, but I'm hashtagging Shot on iPhone and everything I put out there on Instagram and Twitter, and with the hope that it'll happen. Um,
Okay. And what are you
but so
hoping
there's
would happen for you if that happened? That makes me curious. How's that going to change your world? Let's say that happened. What would that do
well,
for you that would just
I
light you up?
I think to see, not that I would actually see one, but for people to be able to see a photo that I took with my phone on a billboard, I think that would be cool.
It's
And and
yes, it
but you know
would.
what? I rate myself as being successful if one person sees an image and they like it. And not by hitting a like button. No, but if they like it, if they look at it and say, "Oh, that's a good picture. That's nice." That to me, I've been successful. So I think I've been successful already, and I really would like to put a hard copy print book out sometime of my stuff, like similar to the ebook that I did, but do it in a hard copy version where people can actually flip through the pages and have a tactile product in their hands, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to flipping through on a phone or an iPad looking at it. So I kind of have aspirations of doing that one day.
Mm-hmm. And what else?
And oh gosh. Uh,
I mean, maybe that's enough for now. But we've all
yeah,
got so many dreams in there, and our dreams are part of what we're learning when we're sharing our images with each other. So, when I know what other people want, when I'm participating with them with their images in community, whether it's on Instagram or in the AIPC group or in Facebook or in any of the other social, I met you on Dayflash. Um,
hmm
when I know what other people are shooting for, I can pay attention and reinforce them with my comments. But if I don't know what somebody's dreaming, I can't really interact. So if you're building this more of this community in AIPC, it's good for people to know, what you're dreaming.
yeah. And as far as the AIPC goes, I think my dream there is just to share with everyone the stuff that I do, the pictures that I take or the art that I make, teach what I can, like teach what I know and learn what I don't. You know,
Hmm.
I've always been about learning about this stuff, and if I know something that someone needs to know or somebody wants to know, if I can help them, then I am more than glad to do it.
Okay. Well, so if people want to, outside the existing members of the community, if people want to come get involved with you at AIPC, how do they do that?
Well, they can go to the website, and it's
Which is,
artfuliphotography.mn.co. So it's part of the
okay,
Mighty
wait a
Bell
minute.
Network.
We got to spell it out. Artful
Yeah.
iPhonography MN, all one word.
No, so it's Artful iPhotography. It's Artful
Photography.
and then iPhotography dot mn
Mm-hmm.
dot co.
CO. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So because that's a bite, that's a big mouthful.
it
So they
is.
would
Yeah.
go there and they could come get involved with the group and
Yes,
you in the
they
group.
can. Yeah, and so it's a private group, but they can ask to join.
Mm-hmm.
And as the host, I'll get a notification that they've asked, and I can just let them in, and they can just join in on the conversation. And now so it's basically a stream of things that come up, posts that come up that are chronological. So if there's a post from, say, yesterday that someone puts a comment on, it now returns to the top of the thread, and so everything's chronological. There's no algorithms or anything going on the website, and I think Muddy Networks has done a great job providing that for us.
Okay. And then I've noticed, because I'm kind of a new member in there, I've noticed that once you get the flow of working within the little private group in the private app, there's
Mhm.
also some topics, and you can connect your work to various topics and connect with other people in relation to those topics. So there's a
Yeah,
lot going on there. Now, if they
and
want to come find you there, that's how they do it. So it's Artful iPhotography.mn.co. But where else
yeah.
do they find you? Where else can people hook up with you?
Okay, so for me personally, they can find me on Instagram, and my username there is McMillan Photo and it's McMillan.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Twitter, it's McMillan underscore photo because I couldn't get this the other it's the same as the other one. But and on Dayflash, they can look me up with just my last name, McMillan. And oh, let's see where else. If you
Are you
want to
on
get
Are you on Flickr?
if you uh I
Not
think
so
I have an
much.
account there, but not so much. Ever
Okay.
since they changed things, I've uh, you could see some of my older stuff there. You can look me up by my name there, I think. But
Okay.
if you want links to basically my entire online presence, my websites, everything, you can go to about.me/McMillan,
Great.
and that will link you to everything.
Okay. Well,
My
that's
my
helpful.
LinkedIn, all
And
that stuff.
there's a conspicuous absence of the Facebook word here. And
Yes.
that's why I'm asking these things, because you're not a Facebook user. So there's plenty of
No.
ways to connect you in the AIPC group, in Instagram, in Twitter, and through this About Me page that you set up that's got links to you everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a website that I do a lot, like not a lot, but I post some stuff about iPhone photography. It's called shotoniPhoneonly.com.
Oh, okay. Shot on iPhone only.
.com, yeah.
.com. Okay, that's a new one for me. I'm learning something new here. I'll get to go see that. And
And
so will
and
other
anything,
people.
yeah, so anything that's there is also on Medium. Now, Medium is a place for writers to post stuff, and it's you could read up to 5 articles free for a month unless you become a premium or a member of the website where you pay, like, I think it's $5 a month.
Hmm.
So, but I do have some of the things that are on my shotoniPhoneonly.com are also on Medium.
And how would we find them there? Are they listed as shot on iPhone only or under your name or what on Medium?
They are under, I think you go to, let's see here. I'll have to go to it now to find out. I think it's, okay, medium.com/ and then the @ symbol, Greg McMillan, all one word.
Okay.
And then that gets you to my first, like, all this, my page of the things that I've written about. Like I've done film at first light and some other things.
Well, and you recently had a wonderful piece in Mobiography magazine too. So I really loved hearing about that in the Artful iPhone photography community.
Yeah, yeah.
So
that was
so you're kind of all over the place, and but you're for sure going to be here doing this podcast, and this is
Yes.
a wonderful way for people to get to know who you are. And I'm, as the temporary interviewer, I'm going to thank
Yep.
you for your time today, and look
Well,
forward to when you decide the next issue will come out.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Meri, for taking the reins on this first episode, because like you mentioned earlier, I'm probably nervous, which I was. I think I'm a little more relaxed now. But I guess I should say that the episodes are going to be on a new website that I've created for this podcast, and it's called Artful
It's a good
IPC,
thing. Yes.
artfulipc.com.
Artfulipc.com is going to be where you put the episodes.
Yes, so you can listen to them there. I'm hoping. I mean, they're not set up there yet, obviously, because this is the first one. But
Right.
I'm hoping that you'll be able to listen to them right there on the website if you want, or that they'll be put out to the Apple Podcast app. Wherever I can get this show to go, I'm going to try to get it there. So whether it's Spotify or other podcast apps, I hope they can pick it up. I would like to get this to go as many places as I can.
Okay.
But the
so
website with the show notes and everything.
When people are looking for the interview, they're going to be looking for it as Artful IPC.
Yes, artfulipc.com. Yeah.
Great.
And there'll be an episodes page.
Great. We'll find it. So thank you, sir. And I wish you the best of luck in your first interview after this. Who do you know who you have lined up? Can we give somebody a hint before we hang up?
I honestly don't know, Meri. I really don't know. I've been kind of busy getting this all put together and getting all my ducks in a row, I guess you could say.
It's perfect.
Starting in the next couple of days, I'm going to start reaching out to those who want to do an interview, and I'm going to start scheduling and I go from there.
Okay, so whoever is listening to this interview, if you would like to be a guest with Greg, this is a really auspicious time to let him know. You might be first.
Yes, you never know.
Okay. Well, thanks again.
All right. Thank you again, Meri. I really do appreciate everything that you've done for me this episode. And wow, I can't believe we got it in.